Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Today's shiur should be Leilu Nishmas Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as Refuah Shleim Meshalem ben Sar Rachel, and Ruchama Rivka Bas Rachel, also Refuah Shlema. All right, so yesterday we started talking about the three different sections of when someone is going to do an act, whether it's a mitzvah or an avera. We started discussing that there's three parts to that. And in order to make up the act, you need to have those three things. The first one is the idea that, hey, I want to do a mitzvah or an avera. The second is planning of it. Okay, I'm going to go do it. I decided already, but now I'm going to go do it and how I'm going to do that. And the third one is the actual act of doing so. And so we discussed that in the first two portions of that, the mindset over there, the Rav Av actually says that over there it might even be foolish for somebody to think that Bitachon applies, but really in the first two parts of it, Bitachon has nothing to do, and that's where Hashem gives you Bechira. And in the third portion of fulfilling that act, whether mitzvah or avera, that if Hashem doesn't want you to carry out that mitzvah or avera, He won't let you, and there the Bitachon will apply. And so understanding these three sections on how an act is actually fulfilled and divided into three, the Rav Av is going to talk about how reward for mitzvahs or for an avera, how that works when it comes to these three, and at what point do you get credit or are reprimanded for what you did or what you thought about doing. So Rav Av says like this: V'im yizdamnu hasibas v'yitachin gemar hamase b'avaydasai. Now, if the factors and resources necessary to perform the act are present, and we are thus able to complete the mitzvah act, asher kadma b'chiraseinu ba, after first having chosen and resolved to do so, right? Because we went through those three things. Yeh lanu hasacha agoda al b'chira ba'avoda, and he will receive the great reward in olam haba for all three components: for choosing to do the mitzvah, the kavanah on how to do the mitzvah, and the act of doing the mitzvah. Ve'im yumana min ha'evarim gemar hamasa, but even if our limbs, which is the third portion of the act to do the mitzvah or avera, even if our limbs are ultimately unable to complete the mitzvah, yeh lanu schar bechira v'hakavana, we will receive reward for choosing and intending to do it. Kasher zacharnu b'ma shekadam, like we mentioned earlier, v'cheinu oynish al avera, and the same holds true regarding the punishment for transgression. That if you do an avera, the same thing. The Rav Av says, you went through the first two processes of thinking about it, planning on how to do the mitzvah or avera. Rav Av says, when you go ahead and you think about doing a mitzvah, you plan on doing the mitzvah, and then you ultimately go out, but you fail to do the mitzvah. You did do ishtadlus, but you failed because Hashem didn't want that to happen at this time. Then you still get credit. Rav Av says the flip side to that is same thing with an avera. An avera, that when you think about it, plan on doing it, and you set out to do it, ultimately if you fail on doing it, you also get that reprimandation for doing that, for thinking about doing the avera. So the Chovos Avavos over here, in the Cliff Notes, is a section over here, and it says, although the Chovos Avavos compares the punishment for intending to do an avera to the reward that you get for doing a mitzvah, which meaning he says that by a mitzvah you get schar for the whole mitzvah, even though you didn't do the third part, but because you had the will, you had the ratzon to do it, then you get the schar for it. And the Chovos Avos is kind of citing that if you do the same thing by avera, if you think about it, the first two portions, even though you don't fulfill the actual act of doing it, you still get reprimanded for it. So over here he says like this: if one plans to commit a sin but is prevented from carrying it out, he will be punished for his evil choice and intent, but not as actually he committed this sin. The Gemara in Kedushin says that Hashem said, blessed is he, does not regard to bad intent as a deed. Meaning, Hashem understands at the end of the day that we have a choice. We've spoken about it many, many times. We learned this over the years, that before we do an avera, if we didn't carry it out, even though we did do the first two portions, we thought about doing it, we planned on doing it. Ultimately, if we didn't do it, there's a lot of different places that we learn that a person has at the last moment has charata and he does teshuva. We've seen that many times. And so he says over here in the bottom that the good intent is counted like a deed. This applies where the person had fully intended and resolved to do the mitzvah and even did what he could to perform it, but was stopped by something beyond his control. Right? So over there, he wanted to do it, and that's how it's credited. When it comes to a mitzvah, we're credited that way. The assumption is that he would have completed the mitzvah. That's the idea. That's why he gets full schar. Had he been able to do so, so he's credited accordingly. In the case of an avera, however, there is no assumption that one who was prevented from committing his planned avera would actually have done it, had he been able to. Since we are Jewish people, at the end of the day, in our hearts, we're really good people. That's the way we are. And so when it comes to a mitzvah, we obviously want to fulfill that mitzvah. And somebody who sets out to do it, that's what he's going to do. If he fails because Hashem didn't want him to, he wasn't able to do it, he did put his best foot forward, he still gets schar for all three portions. By Nevera, however, inherently, even though we have bad machshavos, we have bad intentions, and at the end of the day, we go out, we travel, we go to do that sin, but at the last second, we still could have charata, because that's inherently, we're good people, and at the last moment, you walk away and you do teshuvah, and you regret what you wanted to do. And so therefore, he brings over here on the bottom, that it's not exactly like the Rav Av compares the two. Hashem might punish you, but minuscule. But when it comes to the mitzvah, because that's what you want, Hashem wanted you to go and do it, you did yours. You did your hishtadlus. Obviously, that's the one part that we have to have bitachon, because we know that Hashem is ultimately going to be the one that's going to say, yes, you can fulfill this mitzvah or not, or the avera as well. But when it comes to the mitzvah, we're not faulted for not being able to complete it. So what we learned today is a very, very important thing. Sometimes we feel that someone asks us of something and when we don't feel capable of doing it. Now, we might maybe we're sincerely incapable and we give the person a suggestion to go somewhere else. But sometimes we don't want to even do it because we just feel like we're going to fail. What we learned today is something important. You will get the same schar even when you do not fulfill the actual act because you went ahead and you tried. So even you might be right, you might be incapable of fulfilling that mitzvah to be able to do something for someone. But at the end of the day, you thought about doing it, you planned how to do it, and you set out to go do it. You failed, doesn't matter. You get schar for all three portions. By an avera, we should try to work hard on ourselves to stay away from that. But at the end of the day, even if you set yourself out, even if you're about to do whatever avera it is, remember you have the option to walk away at the last second, and you will not be reprimanded for doing it. Unlike by a mitzvah where you get the schar. Thank you everybody for joining me for today. I really, really appreciate it. It does mean a whole lot. Manny, you especially came on today. I know you made a true effort. I know you're not always able to. Thank you everybody, and I love you all.